A very warm welcome to Art Gallery Explorer, the vlog which celebrates and explores the London art scene. Coming up, today, as part of my Monday review, which explores new openings and hot tickets at the big London galleries, it brings me great pleasure to take you inside the Courtauld Gallery, which you might just be able to see behind me. Actually, I don't think you can. Oh yes, you can over there, to explore a show by American icon Wayne Thiebauld. Thiebauld was born in Arizona but moved to California as a child. And he is well known for producing some of the most iconic American paintings of the 20th century. He's probably most well known for his still lifes of cakes and hot dogs and Americana. He only really started committing to painting in his late 20s and exploded onto the New York art scene in the early 1960s, where his most well-known works, as I say, are still lives of cakes, hot dogs, pinball machines, Americana, often seen as very nostalgic today. They are beautiful works. I've seen a selection of his works at White Cube, but this is the first museum sort of level display of his works. It's going to be small because it's the Courtauld, so I'm hopefully going to be able to bring you every single work, and I'm led to believe there's a sort of a supplementary and additional display of his drawings as well. Thiebauld's often lazily pigeonholed with pop artists from the 1960s, but he saw himself as very separate from that movement. He saw himself more in the tradition of European still life artists, and he very much studied and immersed himself in European art. Indeed, he came to the Courtauld and saw Manet's A Bar at the Folies Bergère, and that massively influenced him. And I suppose, you know, as well as being a portrait in a way, it's also a still life of the bar itself. This show is on till the 18th of January. It's £18 to get in, £20 with a donation, and that includes admission to the wonderful Courtauld collection. So come and join me as we head inside, and I'll bring you every work, and I'll share my thoughts on this exhibition afterwards. I'm excited for this one. I'm going to put some music on, but as always, if it's not your taste, please mute or put on your own choice of accompaniment to this exhibition. I don't want it to spoil it in any way, shape or form. I found out there's a bit of a problem if you're editing a Wayne Thiebauld vlog and putting together these lovely images and you have a sweet tooth, you end up getting incredibly hungry. So I had to pop out and get a Thiebauld inspired cake, which I'm just going to munch before sharing my thoughts on this show from the Courtauld Gallery. I hope you enjoyed it. That was every single work in the exhibition. I'd like to thank the Courtauld for putting this on and for allowing us to share on social media. Wow, well, I've just consumed that absolutely delightful lemon cake with a surprise bit of lemon curd in the middle. It was delicious, if not a bit sickly sweet, like the effect that Thiebauld was trying to achieve, undoubtedly, in some of his wonderful still lives. And I did really enjoy this show. I would go as far as to say, for me, it was a show which made me fall in love with Wayne Thiebauld fully. I told you I'd been to the show at White Cube Mason's Yard in 2017, and something about that showing of his work just didn't chime with me. And I've been thinking back, and I remember that lots of the works were very, very small, and they were kind of dwarfed by this vast gallery. Not all of them, but and so I left feeling as if I wasn't really a fan. This time I most certainly am. And if you've been to this exhibition or you've seen his works in America at different shows, then please do post in the comments your thoughts on this showing. I always think about the exhibitions in terms of the good, the bad and the beautiful, and there was so much good and very, very, very little bad at all about this exhibition. If we start with the good, I love the way that we got a glimpse into the transition of Thiebauld from a young artist finding his feet in works like Meat Counter and Pinball Machine to the fully formed artist with a very strong voice in works like Cold Cereal and Pie Rose. The first two works were produced in the 1950s, and they're kind of scratchy. They're not great works of art, to be honest. I didn't spend much time enjoying them. I had a little look at them, and then all of a sudden, wow, by 1961, you're in Thiebauld. He's found his voice. And I love Cold Cereal for the geometry and the muted neutral colours. But the undoubted highlight in the first room was Pie Rose, which was one of the paintings which made his name at his debut show. I said in my introduction, he burst onto the New York art scene. And that was in an exhibition in 1962 at the Alan Stone Gallery in New York City, where his works literally sold out, and they started being collected by major institutions and collectors almost from the start. And what I love about Pyro is the colours, the uniformity of the rose mixed with the absolute uniqueness of every pie. And this is a celebration of American culture, excess, abundance, and it's also a beautiful still life. And that brings me on to two other points I actually absolutely loved about this show. Firstly, what a great colorist Thiebauld is, using neutral backgrounds, milky almost, or light yellows, but then with really judicious placement of bursts of color on lots of the cakes he's painting. Obviously some of them are absolute feast of color, like this one. And thirdly, I loved, the fact that this was a reinvention of still life. You could really feel him linking back to artists such as Cézanne and kind of matching them. Cézanne was all about the simplicity of form in lots of his still lives. And Thiebauld does this with angular shapes and just keeps it simple to produce some outstanding, in my opinion, still lives. And finally, and this is particularly true in the second room, but I suppose it can be seen in the first as well, there's a really interesting deeper undercurrents and meanings to these works. For example, this was a time of abundance in America. You could argue with the 60s was when people still believed in the American dream fully. And these rows of cakes and the motifs of Americana are really powerful at this time. This was a time of the Cold War, where celebrating what it meant to be American had a particular charge. And yet at the same time, there's massive melancholy in these works, which I'm sure Thiebauld was trying to achieve in the sort of starkness of some of the backgrounds and the muted colours as well. And obviously looking at these works from 2025, we can't help but see a deep sense of nostalgia for America, for an America that has been lost. And obviously in lots of ways, that nostalgia is a trick in itself, because the 1960s were absolutely not a kind of peaceful decade full of harmony. This was the decade of the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War protests, riots in cities across America. And yet these works present this very calm, kind of idealized view, but with that nostalgic tension as well. So there was so much going on in these works. I could go on and on about them, but I'm not going to. And I do recommend that you get down to the show, because the final thing I wanted to say was obviously about the paint itself. These are works that look better with your own eyes when you're viewing them in the flesh than in any reproduction, including in this video. The thickness, the gloopiness, the sheen of the paint is outstanding. And so if you can get down to the Courtauld Gallery before the 18th of January, please make your way down. In terms of the bad, there was really nothing bad about this show, apart from the fact that the galleries at the Courtauld are small, and so this left you wanting more. Thiebauld died at the ripe old age of 101, and he was painting for a lot of his life, and obviously this focused on a tiny bit of it, which is what the Courtauld was right to do. But I would love to see at some point a bigger show of his works that gives us a chance to get a sense of his whole career. And in terms of the beautiful, I've got to go for this one, Cakes, which I think I saw in Washington, D.C. at the National Gallery of Art. But I was so overwhelmed on that visit, seeing so many great works of art, that I didn't actually record it. But looking at it in the gallery, it was the one that I spent the most time pouring my eyes over, and it has everything that I've talked about. I enjoyed the thickness of the paint, the colours, the message of consumerism, the still life form of these cakes, but it's obviously on a much larger scale than many of his still lives. And so, yeah, I really love this one. This is one, if I had a bigger house, I would love to have hanging on my wall. But as I say, do post in the comments with your favourites from this show, especially if you've been. The show's on until the 18th of January. I think that £18 without a donation, £20 with, is fair value when you consider there's also the drawing show downstairs, which I haven't mentioned yet, but which was really a lovely addition. For me, the works right on the third floor, the colour oils were the absolute highlight, but the 17 etchings from the Delight series were so exquisitely rendered as well. And Thiebauld saw these not as sort of competition or accompaniments, but like a chance to explore how the same themes looked in a different style in etchings. And so I thought that downstairs room was really powerful, along with the tools and the kind of a bit of background to the fact that Thiebauld was constantly experimenting with lots of different styles. And then also, and thank you Matt for mentioning this in the comments, the Barber Institute, the wonderful art museum from Birmingham, is shut for refurbishment, and there's an absolutely wonderful treasures of the Barber Institute. I'm showing you a Franz Hals now, and there was a Poussin. I mean, I didn't cover this today because I wanted to keep the focus on Thiebauld, but that's there as well. And then obviously you have the Courtauld collection, so I do think it's a good value. And with that in mind, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I enjoyed it that much. A really strong show. Do check out my Kerry James Marshall show if you haven't already. A very different American artist from a sort of different generation. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much for watching. Do comment if you have a moment, and I look forward to seeing you in the next Monday review.